the International Court in The Hague and we started a legal case. It's not the case, not at all. Yes, we, as part of international law on secession, we informed Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, of what we are doing. And I have spoken, I think, 3 times already to him. But they haven't got a say more than any other country has got in the whole process. So, yeah, that's basically what we're doing.
Now, Hein, listen, I'm not going to let you get by with a softball here, so I'm just going to have to ask this question. Look, I don't understand what you guys are upset about. I mean, look, I mean, it's a rainbow nation. Everybody gets along. The African National Congress's governance has been above board. They've been so forthright and transparent. They're tough on corruption. They seek harmony. So what are you guys upset about in the Western Cape? Come on.
Not the Western Cape alone. Before I answer you on that one, what we strive for is the whole of the old Cape province, which includes the whole of the Western Cape, the whole of the Northern Cape, and a big part of the Eastern Cape, the whole of the Western Free State, and a part of the Transvaal. Why are we upset about? Yeah, like you said, you know, the ANC is doing things so well, exactly the same like Ramaphosa told Trump that there's no murders on farmers. He also told Trump that there's no land grabbing. He also doesn't understand it, but you get my point. The reality is, when the world cracked down on South Africa and declared apartheid a crime against humanity, that was done with 11 laws, as so-called apartheid laws. Since 1994 until today, there's 114 laws against minorities. Now, the question is, and it's a total rhetorical question, obviously, when is the world going to say what the ANC is doing is definitely, most definitely, a crime against humanity? Take farm murders, just as one example. There's many, 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 many more. Which they a lot of times, they don't even react. They now react because the citizens react to those farm murders or attacks. But it happens all the time. This week, it happened again.
It happened every day.
I see it as just a normal crime that went wrong.
Every day this week it's happened. Someone's been murdered on a farm or attacked on a farm.
So my answer to your question is, why are we upset? We're upset because we have got 2 brain cells, and yes, we do use our brain cells to see that we are genuinely oppressed people.
So Hein, what you said there is an important distinction, I think, because I think the other groups, I can't speak for all of them, but I've interviewed 2 other groups, the folks in those other groups. The other groups don't seem to be focused on the Cape, the historical Cape colony, the historical Cape province. They're focused primarily in the Western Cape, and they said, well, if the others want to come along, they can. But from your perspective, ELA is talking about the Northern Cape, a good chunk of the Eastern Cape, even pieces of the Transvaal that used to be part of the Cape province. So all of that is what matters to ULA, correct?
Chris, yeah, well, obviously, because I can't speak for the other groups because I don't know what they stand for and what they do. All I can say is that I know for a fact, if I look at international law and secession, that one of the things that international law and secession says that anything that you plan and anything that you do must be made public and known, not only to your own people, but to the international community. So based on that alone, I know for a fact that the other groups haven't even started with their international process of secession. Why? Because one of the first things that you've got to do, there's a lot of things you've got to do, is you've got to determine your borders. But then, that they've done, then you've got to have your legal argument why that is your border. Now, again, I can't say what their legal arguments for their borders are because they've actually said the Western Cape. And we've known they said everybody in the Western Cape. which means it becomes just a new multicultural rainbow nation. Well, that's interesting. We actually want to try and get away from it. But the reality is...
Already tried that.
Yeah. The reality is that our legal argument is very simple. And that's where the area comes from. That's where the borders come from. It's based on the 2011 IEC figures, South African government figures, where the minorities form the majority. Simple. It's as simple as that. That's how we determined the borders. Would it be better for us to have even a bigger area than we've said? Well, of course, sure, because we, in the process, leave a lot of people outside of the area. But in terms of our legal argument, we can't have it bigger. The other nice thing about international law is that it says the borders that you indicate does not have to be final. Now, there's a lot of stuff behind that, which I'm not going to go into now. It's unnecessary.
Sure.
But it leaves us open for changing those borders, either when we secede, or if we don't secede, if we declare a unilateral declaration of independence, at least we don't have to stick to those borders.
UDI, that's going to harken back memories for some folks. Good and bad. But anyway, of course, I'm referring to Rhodesia there and Ian Smith, the Rhodesian Front. No. Yeah, I know you are, but that's for my viewers. Not everybody's familiar with it. So, let's dispense with a topic here that comes up frequently, not necessarily in terms of ULA. I haven't heard it talked about ULA, but I haven't heard it thrown about by people, and I would say largely by people who are not well informed on the topic that these groups like yourself and others have been talking about. And that's the following. Well, this is just a white thing. It's white supremacy. It's white people, yada, yada, yada. But I look at your documents about what this is all about. You talk about the historic groups of the Cape, including the indigenous Khoi and San groups. You talk about the Cape Coloreds. You talk about the Afrikaans-speaking white population there. So can you tell me a little bit about because you have to define a cultural group. That's one of the conditions, is it not, to do this? And so can you define a cultural group for me then and explain, am I on the right track here or am I misspeaking?
Sort of. Yeah, in terms of that, international law says that you've got to have one of the following 4 points as a common denominator to be able to classify yourself as a group of people. Ethnicity, language, culture, or religion. Now, obviously, if you look at ethnicity, then that is not a point that we can say we are the same with the coloreds. Obviously not. Language, in the area where all the minorities, and the minorities are basically all the Europeans and all the colored nations, including the Indians. Including the Indians. 80% of the minorities speak Afrikaans. So there's your denominator. But if you then go to culture and to religion, much more than 50% in any case is a Western culture, and much more than 50% are Christians. So the reality is, in terms of international law, we can actually use 3 of those points as a common denominator to be able to classify ourselves as the so-called group of people that we want to represent in this secession legal process.
So I would imagine how you'd appreciate that for people outside of South Africa who are not that familiar with the situation, it would be difficult to make that understanding leap to that definition. I mean, when people talk about the Kurds, okay, it's easy. We know who the Kurds are. They speak the same language, the same ethnicity, same religion. They're all in this band in a bunch of countries, and we get the idea for Kurdistan. That makes sense. Or when you talk about Georgians and Armenians, that sort of thing, people can self-identify in the Nagorno-Karabakh, places like that. But when it comes to South Africa, I think a lot of people are not particularly, including South Africans, in my view, from my experience, are not particularly well informed on the argument that you're making here, which seems like a perfectly legitimate argument and one that comports with international standards.
Yeah, Chris, You know, the interesting thing about international law on secession is that I've had one person that attacked the whole process and said, but if you look at by the way, the original law that was written, you are not following it exactly. And I said, well, if that is the case, then you can go to so many places, and you can start with the last one, Kosovo, South Sudan, and then Kosovo. And 193 countries have seceded successfully. And the interesting thing is, not two of them have seceded on exactly the same basis. Why? Logic. We are all different. And in this case, South Africa is a specific, different, I can't, culture is the wrong word here, situation. Because in South Africa, the people from the north don't really, and I'm talking about the northern parts of South Africa, don't really even know the colours. And yes, that's a reality. They don't even know it. So for the international community not to know it, I totally understand it. But luckily, we only have to follow international law, the specific denominators that you can't change. And in terms of us to get those denominators as ethnicity, language, culture, or religion, then we see that in terms of culture, the brown nations, the colored nations, that's the Khoisan, Nama, Griqua, Khoisan, Nama, Griqua. Those are the four nations. Then you've got a subculture, the Korana as well.
Yeah.
Remember, they have today got a Western culture.
Yeah.
They don't have an indigenous black culture anymore.
Dutch Reformed Church, Afrikaans, same
absolutely.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I understand exactly what you're saying, and yes, we know that. But luckily, in terms of our legal argument, it's very clear. There's no misunderstanding about it, and there can be no misunderstanding because it's a very clear thing. Because as I say, if anybody wants to attack those 4 points, the only one that really falls out is ethnicity. But remember, we only need one, and we've got 3.
Good points. So, folks, in the chat, very quickly, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. And no, that's not a mistake. I didn't just stumble into that word Indaba. I picked it intentionally for those who know it from Xhosa or from Zulu. But I chose that intentionally for my strategic consultancy. But this is Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. My special feature guest today is Hein Marx, who is responsible for, leads the, the ULA. I misspoke there, ULA. And it's difficult to get to all the chat. The chat rate is high, which at 10 is the top, and it's at 10. So there's a lot of chat going on. I'll do my best to bring it in, but we can only bring it in occasionally because there's a lot of things we need to unpack here with Hein. But I will do one thing here. If you want to get attention and jump out, you're free to super chat. If you got an account set up with Google, you can super chat, and that'll pop up on the screen. And I'll make sure that any super chat questions that come up, as long as they're not offensive, I'll ask them of Hein, and we'll address them. Now, very quickly, this is one question from the chat. I think it's kind of an interesting one here, and I think this is a regular a member of my channel, a regular viewer of my channel, Sasa Markovic, and I think Sasa might be surprised to find out what I'm about to say. I don't think he knows that I know a fair amount about Yugoslavia, but Sasa says, I lived through all this. In 1991, Slovenia and Croatia had the same arguments to secede from Yugoslavia. What happens when the ANC does not agree with legal secession? And just for the rest of the viewers, of course, Slovenia declared its independence. Slovenia and Croatia, after I came back from the Gulf War, they started making noise. The Slovenes broke away and fought a 9-day war, and the Yugoslav National Army said, to heck with it, let them go. There's almost no Serbs there. We don't care. It's a tiny country. They left. But then, of course, there was a brutal 6-month war between Croatia and ethnic Serbs and the Yugoslav National Army in eastern Slavonia. And we saw this in Vukovar and Vikovici, incredibly brutal conflict, and it spread from there into Bosnia. But okay, so back to Sasa's point there, Hein. He's seen this before. It led to warfare. What if the ANC says no?
Sasha, the answer is actually very simple. They will not say yes.
Okay, well, there you go.
Of course, they won't say yes, because this week, the previous president, Mbeki, his brother, wrote an article in South Africa where he again attacked the ANC and said, stop bullying your tax base, because we are the real only tax base. Mm-hmm. So I know that's not what he wants to hear. So let me answer you, Sasha. I know exactly where you're going. Sasha, the other thing that you most probably also don't know is that in South Africa, apart from being oppressed, apart from being legally pushed down by 114 laws, us as minorities, and that includes, I want to make it very clear again, the colored and Indian nations in South Africa. In South Africa, they're the third largest political party, the EFF. They call themselves a political party, but their leader is not a leader. He's the chief, commander-in-chief. He walks around with a military beret, all of them. He goes onto stages with AK-47s, fires it off. Nothing happens to him because that's fine. He's just one of them. The previous president, not Ramaphosa, including Zuma, they sing, kill the boer, kill the farmer, one bullet, one settler. Malema, joker, he does not make a joke out of it. He has said many, many times, and it doesn't stop. They will take whatever they want, whatever it costs. Under the EFF flag, that's the political party. They are in parliament. They shout and scream and sing that they will kill us. They will kill each and every white. They will kill even the babies and use them as fertilizer. So, Sasha, no, it's not new to us. So now we've got a choice. Are we going to just sit down and accept it? Or are we going to say we are following a legal international process and the ANC will not accept it? We know they won't accept it. But at least, because we are following an international legal process, when, not if, Sasha, when they start, because they're already killing whites, and it's in the thousands and thousands, and Chris can verify that. Are we going to sit down and let them just kill us, or are we going to defend ourselves? Now, let me not make this as a misunderstanding to anybody that listens. We, as the minorities, and that includes, don't underestimate that there were thousands of so-called Cape-colored corps as well in our previous army. I want to make this categorically very, very clear. Let them come. We've had enough. We've had enough of being threatened. We've had enough of, in any case, being treaded on. We've had enough of the current President Ramaphosa talking about his people as the blacks. What are we? Fine, I don't want to be his people, but he divided us. We didn't divide ourselves. We will not be sheep being led to a slaughterhouse. What they're doing at the moment is that in any case. If they want a civil war, I definitely don't want it for any of us. I've gone through it. I know what a war is. And I'm talking about a genuine war. I've been there, as have been hundreds of thousands of other South Africans in the Angolan War. We've proved ourselves. We might be old now, but don't underestimate me. And Sasha, I know you meant good by meaning it. I'm not attacking you. I'm actually talking, in this case, specifically to Ramaphosa, that doesn't even talk to his own people. Forget about us. Let them bring it on.
Yeah, no, it's famous repeatedly in speeches this year in 2020. Ramaphosa addresses our 50 million people. There's at least 58 million people in South Africa. About 4.7 million whites, another 6 or 8 million coloreds, a million Indians. So What are you talking about there? Anyway, so I get your point there. I need to do a little bit of housekeeping very quickly. I do this for everyone who becomes a paying member of Chris Wyatt Africa, supporting the channel. So as a retired Army colonel, I've been in the habit throughout my career of rendering salutes, both as a private, offering them up to officers, and then as a colonel and lieutenant and so on, returning them. So for new members of my channel, I always render a hand salute. NVZ has become a member of the channel. Thank you so much for that. So there's a proper hand salute to you. So thank you so much for that. Now, there's a quick question here. Before I want to get to this because I don't want to forget it. The process is going along, and I think it involves you need so many signatures, and how many signatures you need, and what's that for, and how many signatures do you have? That's what someone was asking.
Okay. What we've done is we've looked at, like I said, the area earlier, which are basically composed out of voting districts. Mm-hmm. And in those voting districts, obviously the figures are there. So we know exactly how many voters are there. That includes everybody in those voting districts. So what we're saying, there are approximately, I don't know the exact figure now, it's 3,900,000 and something voters in those districts. We need 50% plus one. Then we've got the majority mandate. Mm-hmm. So we made it round and said we need 2 million, which means that's more than 50%.
Sure.
That's where the 50% the 2 million voters comes from. At this stage, we've got 326,634 votes. So we are far away from 16.33, I think, percent, somewhere around there, of the total that we need. Why do we only have that? We don't invent votes like other organizations. Why? Quite simply because we know 100% that our votes will be audited by an national organization when we either secede or declare a unilateral declaration of independence. So there's absolutely nothing in it for us to invent votes, because we know if we do, our whole process falls flat. Other organizations do it because they believe that they will get more votes in next year's municipal elections. But then again, I suppose that is all fine in bullshitting people just to get votes for a political party. That's not the game that we are in.
Well, as you said, you're not a political party. It doesn't sound like you have an intent to become a political party too after independence. So let me make sure I'm clear on this, because I mean it matters different places. So like if you run for office or you're trying to get a ballot initiative here in the U.S., as in many countries, you can get signatures, but they have to be registered voters. Does that have to be the case, or just people who are eligible to vote? Because that makes a distinction, or does it make it more challenging?
Yeah, in terms of international law, mm-hmm. You must be, according to your own country's law, 18 years or older.
Okay.
You don't have to be registered as a voter, but you must be 18 years or older. And you're obviously, in our case, we've got what we call an identity number in South Africa.
Sure.
That is the proof of that.
So I asked this question of other groups who I interviewed on this topic, and the question is, it's my doorbell. The question is, Avon calling. The question is, if the Cape secedes, and you get away, what about the rest of South Africa's minorities? I mean, Gauteng has a lot of minorities, Indians and whites. There's a fair number of whites in the Eastern Cape and even in KZN, less so with coloreds, lots of Indians in KZN. Are you concerned about their safety and welfare, or is it not an issue for you? Other groups have told me that, well, we're not focused, this is our issue. We're worried about this part of the country. Is it a concern? Because I think that, honestly, it's a very real possibility with the buffoon-in-chief, commander-in-chief, Julius Malema, people like that who've already threatened violence repeatedly and threatened to cut the throat of whiteness when they removed Athol Trollop from Nelson Mandela Bay. Do you not have concern, or do you have concern about other minorities across the country? And actually, it was a question that one of my viewers asked.
Chris, firstly, let's make it clear, he is a buffoon.
Well, I called him the buffoon-in-chief, didn't I?
Yeah, he's a buffoon, because let's just spend 20 seconds on that. But this is the banana republic or the shithole country that Trump calls us, which I totally agree with Trump on. In South Africa, we still have the level of conditions that you must meet to go, for instance, to university. I don't think he made our last year, which we call matric year. But if you look at the figures that came out on his so-called certificate, it's like, I don't know if you know what F stands for, but it's like, I don't want to say, it's effing bad.
Gotcha.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
And he got now suddenly a degree. Interesting how nepotism work, that you just give your comrades, they don't even have to be in your party, you give them degrees. What a joke. Your question was, am I concerned? Firstly, I want to make it clear, remember, we're not only looking at the Western Cape. You asked at the Western Cape. We are looking at a much bigger area. So let me answer it from that point of view. What about the minorities that are out of the secession area, which includes, by the way, Natal? Mm-hmm. Because in terms of our legal argument, Natal cannot be part of it, because the figures just doesn't, it just shows you we can't include it.
No, if anything, then Natal would make the same argument for the Zulu people, that they would have their own homeland. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you see, there's a difference. Mm-hmm. The Zulus, for instance, or the Xhosa, or the Venda, or the Swazi, whoever you are, they already had their homelands. They are concentrated in their area. Mm-hmm. This is part of the problem in South Africa, and it's a real, genuine problem, is that when that's where the original, they called them the voortrekkers, started with their move in 18, I think they started in 1832, the first people moving into the country when there was nothing. They met here and there some people. Then on the eastern side, basically, I would guess about 200 kilometers northeast of Port Elizabeth, they started meeting the first Xhosas. And therefore, until today, Transkei is for the Xhosas. KwaZulu-Natal is the Zulu. That's where the most of the Zulus were. The problem is that after the Boer War that ended in 1901, the Europeans, and in a big way, the Khoisan and the Coloureds, were scattered all over South Africa. Because remember, the Khoisan were involved with a lot of these wars. I don't know if you know the whole thing about the Blood River battle against the Zulus in 1835.
1838, yep, I'm familiar with it, yep. Been to the site.
1838, yeah.
1838, been there, very well familiar with it.
Yeah, and there was a lot of Coloureds, call them Coloureds.
Yes.
In that law with the whites as well. So they've always been with the Europeans.
Well, in fact, the Greek will fought alongside with the Basotho and the Voortrekkers against the Ndebele, chasing Mzilikazi north of the Limpopo into what became Matabeleland.
Absolutely. You know the history here. So what I'm saying is that we scattered all over. So now that's part of the problem. And we are really concerned about what will happen to our people that's not in this area that we can, and I'm saying again with our current legal argument, that we can't secede. What we do know is that if we secede and there are people that are not living in that area that will be prosecuted, in inverted commas, by the ANC as a new independent country, we will not accept it. And in that case, I take my hat off to America, that has got exactly the same attitude towards their people.
Gotcha. Makes sense. There's, it's interesting, a lot of chat going. The chat's going quite strong. There's a lot of comments here, a lot of support, a fair number of questions too. One of the questions was from someone, and this is a fair question, I think, if let's say you got independence for the Cape, besides a birthright, having been born there, or residency living there, which would make sense, what gets you a ticket to the new Cape of Hope, or whatever you're going to call the country? How do you, I mean, if your grandparents live there and now you live in NZ, can you come back? I mean, but I don't know if it's fair for you to answer this because it was something that a legislature would have to come up with, or a constitution, I would imagine, the coming later on. But are the initial thoughts on it? Or do you guys have ideas on this? Because
before this is already those answers are already on our website.
Okay, well, before you answer, let me just, because a lot of people are going to say, you know what? I bet you a couple 100,000, if not more, Kosa are going to pick up and move to the Western Cape or to the Cape because they know life's going to be better. Are you going to have a flood of refugees coming in? Anyway, so please go ahead. The website and the answers.
Okay. If you look at our website,
yes.
www.ulacongress.com, that's also answered in there. But remember, this new country is for the minorities. Mm-hmm. Those minorities, we have made very clear, and you've actually mentioned it. I heard it when you said it, which meant you got it from our website. We've determined exactly who those minorities are. So it's not open for just anybody to come in. If you can prove, now this is where it becomes very interesting, and that is the ANC are extremely arrogant. There's no other word for it. Why? Because absolute power does not only absolutely corrupt, it makes you absolutely arrogant as well. And they started the whole process of land grabbing in 1994 already. I call it land grabbing because it's nothing else than land grabbing. Why? Because they tell the world and they tell their people in South Africa and us, that they want to get their traditional land back. Farmers that have got it, they will buy it and the people will get it back. All of us are still waiting for the ANC to give one of those farms, just one, that they bought, by the way, with our tax money, mm-hmm. to those so-called blacks that could prove that it was their land. What did the government do? They put the people on the land, but they keep the property on their name. There's a property deed. It doesn't belong to the blacks. It belongs to the government.
Yep. Yep. Now, that's it's a time-tried tactic in Zimbabwe, which is, and of course, no one ever refutes this because I'm 100% right about this and have been talking about it for over 20 years. 42% of the commercial farmland in Zimbabwe was sold at least one time after 1980. So only one government from 1980 to 2017, and that was Robert Gabriel Mugabe as prime minister, then a new constitution in 1988, and then president the rest of the way. And his government and their lands ministry had first right of refusal on every hectare of land, commercial farmland, ever sold in Zimbabwe. So no one could buy land without their permission. And the British government gave them 63 million pounds from 1980, and they finally stopped around 1993-94 because it was all going to senior SANU-PF officials who would get palatial estates for themselves and not develop the land for war veterans or for the poor. So the argument is that the settlers stole this land. It's horse shit. Sorry, it's utter nonsense. It's cock.
I totally agree with you.
It's cock.
It's cock.
Yeah,
yep.
42% of the land could have been bought for black Africans with money given by donors from the external. Now they want donors, but in South Africa, same sort of situation. People distort the whole land issue. You've got this question. Even in the 1980s under apartheid, white farmers were relocated. Many farmers from Northwest had their land where families had lived 4, 5, 6, 7 generations. They were removed and moved to places like KZN or Natal, and the land was given to Bophuthatswana so they could build this homeland, that sort of thing. So now, I'm not implying that the majority of people who suffered were white. No, not at all. But the point is that this is a much more complex issue than people make it out to be. And I get your anger and frustration. Much of the land that the government has the little they've given to aspiring farmers in South Africa sits fallow or is sold back to commercial farmers because people want the money, not the land. They're not interested in being a farmer. And the government provides no extension services. It provides no assistance, no credit, no equipment, and it just expects things to happen magically. I think they all went to school with Michael Bloomberg, our famous idiotic mayor of New York, who ran for president of the United States as a turncoat Democrat. And he said that being a farmer is simple. I can teach anybody to be a farmer. You just stick a seed in the ground, you water it, and it grows. Yeah. Yikes.
So, I'd love him to come and do that in Africa.
Exactly.
He'll die of hunger.
So let me do a little more housekeeping there real quick, Hein. So we've been going for about 50 minutes. We got a good sized audience now, about 225. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate it. Listen, 85 likes. If you want this video to be seen by other folks who don't have the opportunity to be here now, you want this message to get out. And if you do or you don't, that's fine. That's your call. But if you're watching the show right now, no, not you, Hein. I'm talking about the audience. If you, of course, you want the message to get out. But I'm saying to the audience, if you want this message to resonate out there, you need to push the like button, because the more likes as a percentage of views, the more likely this will appear on somebody's stream and feed. We are already seeing shadow banning and blocking. One of my moderators is a subscriber of my channel, and twice yesterday he was unsubscribed by YouTube. He's been a subscriber of mine since I had a dozen subscribers, and he was removed twice, and only because he's always on my channel and he promotes this video and usually puts it on my videos on YouTube, or not YouTube, on Facebook. It was blocked today. So please smash the like button and let us get us up there as many likes as possible. A couple things from the chat there real quick, Hein. So I guess you know Yanni Maya. He's in the chat. He's been saying a lot of things in the chat. And Yanni said that it's our birthright. Pete Retief negotiated or got this land. And of course, he's talking about Natal. And I appreciate that with my Pete Retief beard here. But I hope that my fate isn't quite as tragic as Pete, as he was murdered by the Zulu king. Fortunately, they found the deed. And so there is a claim. There is an Afrikaner and Boer claim to Natal as well.
Well, a part of it, not all of it, obviously.
That's true. That's true. It wasn't all of it. Yeah, but see, let me get the other couple other comments that came in here. I just want to get really quickly. Yeah, he said he died for a piece of Natal, so he said that specifically. And then Grimm said, "We'll force the Goonie nations to choose responsible leaders and make them grow up as a nation very quickly. This process gives them self-governance too." And then Jim G says about you, he says, "God forbid this guy who's done all the work gets run over by a bus and we're left with no one who's up to the speed on Hein's work." So that begs a question, Hein. One of the things that I'm famous for, because I cover all of Africa, is railing against people who don't develop subordinates to take over and run organizations for them. So, for instance, in Rwanda, what other politician do any of us know about other than Paul Kagame? Nobody. The guy's been there since 1994, the genocide. He chased the genocideers out, and he's been in power. In Uganda, Yoweri Museveni. Who else? Nobody knows. So it begs a question. Do you guys, your organization, you've been around for a few years, do you develop people subordinates so someone else can take responsibility? Because you mentioned the other group that started earlier, and the founder fell ill, and it kind of it fizzled away. Yeah, I don't think you want the ULA to fizzle away.
No, definitely. A lot of people, unfortunately, I suppose because I've been involved from the beginning, and when we started this whole process of getting the message out, remember, most of the work was actually done before we started getting the mandate. So when we started getting the mandate, it was, fortunately or unfortunately, my face that went out. So a lot of people see the ULA only as Hein Marx, and that's not true. Our vice president, for instance, is a Khoisan. Then we've got, there's so many people that can take over, it's unbelievable. In fact, it's a very valid point to make that if I fall away, if that was the case. But that was my concern a couple of years ago. I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago. If something happens to me, then the whole process dies. It's definitely not the case anymore. No, definitely not.
No, that's good.
We've got really competent people. I say it all the time to our people, please don't, because I've been here from the beginning, see me as the alpha and omega of I must do it. If anybody wants to, remember, we're not a political party. Mm-hmm. We're not trying to win votes for popularity, to get an income and to get a pension. That's all the politicians are interested in. We're not. So if anybody in our organization wants to take my position over, it's very simple. Well, theoretically, it's the challenge, but it's not a challenge. You can say, listen, I want to take it over. I think what you're doing is not good anymore, or you are getting too old, or whatever he wants to say. And I will very, very glad, I've said it many times, very gladly say, perfect. Put it to a vote. If somebody wants to, and there are people that can take over. Don't make a mistake, really.
No, it's a good point.
Unfortunately, or fortunately for a lot of these other people, some of these people will not be so nice as I am with some of these groups and people attacking me. So be careful what they wish for.
Yeah, it might have buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
So listen, we're coming up on close to an hour, and there's a couple questions I need to get to. One specifically, and this is probably the most important question. For those who know me or know me well, they won't be surprised by this question. So I need to ask this question. It's actually twofold. Rugby fan?
Well, of course I'm a rugby fan. You've got my Stormers.
All right,
on.
that answers the other question. There you go. Actually, this is not your Stormers jersey. Hang on.
I beg your pardon. Yeah, you see, mine is number 2.
Sorry, I had the earplug out. I couldn't get your response. What'd you say?
No problem. I said that's 11.
Yep.
So you're a fast guy. No, I'm slow. I'm number 2.
No. You won't find me in the scrum. That's why I don't have colorful ears. No, I'm a left winger and not politically.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but this is from Cape Town, from the Stormer store. I had it shipped with these ridiculously expensive DHL shipping charges, but it's where I usually get my jerseys when I can't get to South Africa. But yeah, Stormers fan through and through. I get a lot of grief for that. People begging me to wear Lions jerseys and even Greekwas jerseys. I actually love to have a Greekwas jersey, but it's like you can never get them. That place is hard. You know, it's just like the pitch. It's like concrete. Getting a hold of them.
Chris, let me do this on your channel, and let me get the news out that the Griekwas with their Queen Dondeleia, and Queen Dondeleia's person that's doing all her things, Professor Bertie van Wyk from the University of Stellenbosch, have officially joined the ULA.
Wow. And is that an exclusive? I haven't heard that before.
That's exclusive, yeah.
Whoa, look at that. Awesome. Well, aren't you guys glad you hung around? Whether you're happy about that news or not, you just got exclusive news. Queen Namdalea and the Griekwa have joined the ULA. That's fascinating. Interesting. And it points to the whole thing about culture. That's a group of people who, when people talk about the Voortrekkers, I always say that, listen, the Griekwas and the Orlums and the Rehoboth Bosters, they were the original Voortrekkers. They're the ones that took off long before anyone else just to get away from the Cape and all its nonsense. So well, congratulations. That's interesting. Fascinating development. I think that the Griekwas is a group of people that is often overlooked and neglected. Even in South African history, a lot of South Africans don't know much about them and are really unfamiliar with them and are surprised when they learn about them.
Yeah, the Griekwas were they're quite a big nation, and they've got actually also a very sad history, also being pushed around quite a lot. But that's a different story. I don't want to talk about their history.
That's right.
Let them rather do it themselves because they're part of us now.
But I will say this, listen, if you guys ever want to do a fundraiser to get them a proper rugby pitch, I hate to see people get traumatic brain injuries every time they play up there in Kimberley. My goodness, that's like playing on concrete. That stuff is hard as a rock. I mean, it's almost like they must paint it green to trick people into thinking there's actually grass out on the pitch.
Yeah, well, that's what we rugby guys do. You know, when I was in Standard 5, we lived in Darling. Darling is a little town on the west coast. The other rugby teams never wanted to come and play against us, quite simply because, and I'm not exaggerating, because literally 90% of our rugby field, there was no grass. They were literally all just thorns. Ouch. I remember as a child in Standard 4, Standard 5 playing rugby. Well, not only playing.
What happened there?
With all the thorns, but your feet start getting hard because we didn't play with boots then, obviously not.
Yeah.
But the other teams didn't want to come and play against us because everybody said, no, we're not playing on a thorn field.
My screen is kind of frozen up. I don't know if the stream is still going out there. Hopefully, okay, there it is. I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, something happened there. Can you hear me, Hein?
I can hear you perfect.
Okay. Yeah, it's everything kind of froze from. I don't know if like somebody's stealing my hard drive just suddenly went to 100% use. I don't know why. So I'm going to make sure that I get some of that back. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that, folks. Oh, it's still freezing up a little bit there. Hang on, Hein. I think there's one way for me to fix this. Gosh bless. Yeah, I've summarized. My RAM is all getting eaten up here. Come on. Sorry, hang in there, folks. Just a second, Hein. Okay, I don't have control of my mouse. There we go. Okay, I've just found a way to solve that. I've just crashed my browser intentionally, which shouldn't affect the stream. What's going on here? Oh, my goodness. My computer's just acting up there. Sorry about that. Okay, it's shutting down. Hein, you still there?
I'm totally. I can hear every word.
Oh, okay, that's
great. I know
great.
about your crash, your 100% usage on your hard drive.
All right, so it looks like we're back. What I did is I outwitted Microsoft. Sometimes you have to do that. So sorry about that, folks. All right, listen. You're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa.
Don't say it too loud.
Yeah. Well, they'll come after me. But you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Adopt Africa channel. My special feature guest today is Hein Marx. We've been talking about the ULA and Cape Secession and independence. Listen, Hein, there's one more question I definitely want to get to, but I mean, we could ask a whole bunch more questions. But how about, can you stay a little bit longer, or do you have to go, or can we talk a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm totally, no problem.
All right. Well,
another 2 hours.
Another 2 hours. Well, look, okay. Remember I mentioned buyer's remorse? You got to be careful what you ask for, because I have had a 4 hour and 20-minute stream on this channel. So anyway, so Sasa, who asked the question earlier, is asking a question, legal question. Will a mandate given to the ULA be sent to the parliament as a single submission, or would it be one submission with 2+ million signatories? I'm not really understand what he means by that. Oh, maybe he means you have to actually send
I know what he means.
Okay, please.
No. Okay. In terms of international law, we are done basically communicating with the South African government. One of the things that you've got to do, you've got to deplete basically all your internal, or exhaust all your internal remedies, which means we're not asking for the South African government for anything anymore. The only thing that we communicate with the South African government as from February last year will be when we demand, in terms of international law, we demand a referendum. So the next question then automatically will be, well, they won't give it to you. I know they won't. Then, to answer you on that, we will demand it again. And they won't won't give it. Then we will demand it again, and they won't give it. And after the third time that we've demanded, and remember, every time that we demand is not just a phone call, we make sure that this is on paper, as we've done up until now. After we've done it 3 times, and again, I can say this in open public, because luckily, arrogance makes you think that nobody and nothing can touch you. Because after the 3rd time, and remember, every time that we demand it, we make sure that the international community knows about it. Who's the international community? It's countries, it's America, it's Germany, it's the United Nations, it's everybody. After we've demanded it in terms of international law, then we declare a unilateral declaration of independence. Both. So then it becomes simple, because then they are ignoring international law.
Well, that's a good point.
At the moment, they're not doing anything wrong in terms of the legal process. They are just being stupid, nothing else. But they're not doing anything wrong in terms of international law.
Now, you mentioned Queen Queen Namakela from the Griqua coming, and the Griqua Nation coming to join ULA. Isn't there also a Khoi, a purported Khoi king in the Western Cape who claims suzerainty over the Khoi peoples, and he's talking about secession, independence, and does this play a role, or is that guy legitimate? What's the deal on that? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, you said it correctly. Claims. Remember, we've got the Khoi. Our vice president is a Khoi, and I can't answer you from myself. I can only give you an answer in terms of what is coming from the Khoi. They don't recognize him as a king at all. Point. Does it worry us? No, because we work with, to give you an idea, for instance, Queen Dandelion from the Griquas. She was invited as a princess with the other Griqua princesses invited to Parliament by Ramaphosa. And because she is the genuine closest relevant of Adam Kok, who was the Griqua king, she was acknowledged by Ramaphosa in Parliament as she was a princess. She was acknowledged as the queen. And now it comes back and bites him in the back, because she realizes what this is all about. She wants freedom for her people. She doesn't want to have handouts that she can live nicely and her people suffers. Because that's how politicians work. Make one person rich, but let the rest just suffer. And she's not in for that. Absolutely not.
That sounds very familiar with politicians. So here's a question here. And this is from Sonja Liebenberg. And I think I know the answer. She said, will white Namibians be allowed to register and join? My supposition would be only if you have ties, or no? Could you just...
No. If you fall in that category on our website that you've said earlier, remember, literally 90+% of white Namibians are in any case from South Africa. Because remember, they moved from South Africa northwards.
Well, with the exception of the Germans.
Remember, what does our description say? Settled in the Cape. Which means they couldn't go to Southwest Africa or Namibia earlier. There were no harbors. It was virtually impossible to get there. So they went to Cape Town. And that's how Namibia was populated, basically from Cape Town upwards. It was first the Dorsland trackers who ended up eventually in Angola.
Yeah, those who survived.
Yeah, well, a lot of them survived. Remember, in 1974, with the outbreak of the Genuine War in Angola, those Dorsland trackers were still living in Angola, speaking Afrikaans and Portuguese. And when they had to all flee with the Portuguese, a lot of them went to Namibia or Southwestern, and a lot of them came to South Africa. So they all interconnected from Cape Town, basically, or previous Cape Town area.
So if I were a Khoi and I had to be a computer program and I'm living in New York or living in Auckland or living in Gauteng for work, I could get citizenship in this new republic because of my origins.
Let me answer you with a question.
Okay.
Does more Jews live outside of Jerusalem or in Israel? Outside of Israel or in Israel?
Well, there's more Jews in the United States than there are in Israel.
I rest my case.
All right, I think that kind of does answer the question. So someone said Catalan. So before you answer that, I should make a note that for Catalan, there's a problem. And their problem with their secession is that their constitution expressly forbids it in Spain. And so that's
Article 155.
Yeah, so that's a very specific legal constraint, and that's why the Spanish government said no. But there's other cases of secession independence efforts that have gone very poorly. Of course, some historical examples like Biafra, which did not go well at all. But there's other cases of velvet divorce. The Czech and Slovak republics from Czechoslovakia became two separate countries. We've recently seen the secession of South Sudan after decades of struggle for that. Of course, not a very good history since then, but that's another story. So when people talk about secession independence, you mentioned 190 some countries or something like that earlier had done this at some point. What are the general feelings? I mean, for internet. I mean, I don't know how you can answer this, but maybe you can. In the international community, say the United Nations or other countries, what's the reception towards this idea? Are people listening at all? Do they even give a flip? Do they care, or is it just going to be presented as an ultimatum to the international community?
Okay, let me begin with answer you from the beginning. Firstly, In terms of Catalonia, apart from the fact that you've said Article 155 of the Spanish Constitution forbids it, that does not mean that the people may not get it, because international law says they may get it. So why didn't they get it? Because, and this boggles my mind, because they never followed the international process legal route of secession. They only followed, because they had 98% votes, they had the mandate. You see, this is where some people say, oh, so the mandate is worth nothing, or the mandate is worth everything. That's not true. Every step in your international process of secession is, to exaggerate it, worth 100%. Not one is worth more than the others. The interesting thing about the whole legal process of secession is it's one of the very,
I just read an unbelievable article in the Epic
process in the world where you must follow a legal process, where nobody checks up on you. And once you're done, then they look back at it and say, have you done it correctly? Yes or no. If you haven't done it correctly, well, sorry, then it can't work. It's in your hands, totally. This is why it's so important that what we as the ULA do, we must be legal and we must stay within the constraints of that law. So in terms of Catalonia, very sad, but they never followed international law. They only followed their own sense of, well, we are 98% of the people, we've got 98% of the vote with the mandate, so now we secede. Nothing. They haven't started even with the process. That's why it failed. Then the last part of your question was, can't remember.
No, that was it. I think it wasn't a two-part question. That's fine. Yeah, it's a good response. Thanks for that. There's another question here which has come up a few times, and so let me address this and put a few of the comments together from several people. You guys have been around since and this is not, I'm not setting you up, by the way, just make sure this is clear, okay? But you guys have been around since around 2009. Is that correct? ULA? 2011. 2011. My mistake. Okay, 9 years, not 2009. Okay, 2011. And these other groups have been around for a bit now too. Some are more recent, but some are older. And the question, it begs the question. A lot of people are asking, what's taking so long? And that's not the question I'm going to ask. You can answer that if you want, but do you have a timeline? You've got 300,000 plus signatures, which are legitimate. You'd like to get over 2 million so you can make this a fait accompli. Do you have a timeline? 2021, 2023, October this year? I mean, is there some sort of timeline, an aspiring timeline? And is that a realistic, and maybe you have a more realistic one? I'm not sure.
No, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, but it's actually more fortunately, we don't have a timeline, quite simply because luckily you don't have to have a timeline, because international law on secession, and I'm answering your first part of the question, which you didn't want the answer on, is the law was written specifically with the idea that you can't decide today, I want to secede because I am, to use an Afrikaans term, I'm the moeren with the government, and then you go and secede the next day. It doesn't work like that. It says you must exhaust all internal remedies. Now that sounds just like a couple of words, but in legal terms, what does you must exhaust all mean? And the reality of that is it's so wide that the whole idea behind that specific part in international law is that nobody can turn around and say, well, you haven't tried that avenue, you haven't tried that, you haven't tried this avenue, you haven't tried that. And because of all governments and bureaucracy, that takes time. So to answer the person on that question, why did it take so long? Because it was designed, not because we wanted it like that, because the whole law on secession was designed, listen to this, not to succeed. Because secession was written, firstly, get it, not to succeed, but if you really can't sort your problems out with your government, well, then you've exhausted that, and then you carry on, and then obviously, then the international community must support you. Your rest of your question was, did we contact, and what is the feeling of the other international community partners that we've talked to? Now, in terms of exactly who we spoke to, I don't think that would be very ethical to say that. But what I can say,
don't address that.
But what I can say is that I have spoken to Antonio Guterres 3 times. His attitude was very, very positive. In fact, he actually put the case, and I've got this on paper. This is not verbal. That he actually sent it to Michelle. What is her surname now? The Commissioner of Human Rights, which is the second highest position in the United Nations. So they are not ignoring it, but remember, they haven't got power to do anything about it. It's not their job to sort it out. The interesting thing is, and this comes back to the so-called exhaustion of internal remedies, it is our job to sort out what we want to sort out, and then to carry on if we can't sort it out. Now, that last letter that was delivered to Ramaphosa, February 2019, has put the whole process that we've done, not because the letter was written to Ramaphosa as the president, the whole purpose, and this is total open. The purpose of that letter was not to inform Ramaphosa of what we've done, but after we have delivered that letter to Ramaphosa by the Sheriff of the Court of Pretoria, to then send it to Trump, to the United Nations, and there's many more. This is the letter that was delivered to Ramaphosa. Not, you know, with all respect, even in this case, to Ramaphosa, because this is what arrogance does. This letter is also on our website. Anybody can go and read it. If somebody must write a letter to me, about me, and my party like that, I would really resign and go and live somewhere in the Kalahari where nobody will ever get rid of me. But then again, you see, I will do that. You know why? Because I've got pride.
Well, I've lived in the Kalahari in Botswana, so I can't say I'd recommend it. It's beautiful, but it's dry. It's quite dry.
There's not a lot of people around.
Yeah, well, that's the one advantage of it too. And you meet some
and that is why I would live there. I wouldn't want people to even see me or hear that people talk about me. It's a shame if you read that letter to think that somebody wrote a letter like that to me that was sent all over the world. And what did Ramaphosa do? Nothing.
He doesn't ever do
That's
anything.
Arrogance. That's arrogance.
He penned a 7-page letter about corruption. Ooh, that'll stop it.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I laughed. I have to say this. I had to laugh when Ramaphosa said last week, everybody that's corrupt must be brought to book. What, is he going to be the accused number one or what?
Well, it's not going to work very well, is it? So a lot of people are always looking outside of South Africa and looking to others to resolve this or to come to the rescue or support them. But what people forget is we live in a Westphalian system of states. It's been around since 1648. Now, true, state sovereignty is under assault by social media, by terrorist organizations, by multinational corporations, and in the 21st century, states exercising their sovereignty has become increasingly more difficult, but perhaps that might be an advantage for an independence movement in South Africa. But we live in a Westphalian system of states, and so South Africa has sovereignty. Whether people like that or not, it does have sovereignty. The United Nations has no sovereignty over South Africa. It can sanction South Africa if it wants. It can protest South Africa, but it can't send an army to South Africa. And people forget that. By the same token, the United States has no sovereignty over South Africa. And every country has its own problems. So when people start screaming, who's going to help us, who's going to help us, I would imagine that, well, from my view, you're going to have to help yourself. And I don't know your view for ULA, but it seems like your view is that this is a process that you all need to pursue in the best interest of people in that part of the country. How's that? Is that on the money or what?
Absolutely. You're totally right. Except there's one thing I've got to bring in here.
Sure.
If you like him or if you hate him, that's totally irrelevant. He's the president of America. In December 2018, a new law was brought in and accepted. Well, it was actually brought in long ago, but it was accepted in December 2018, and it was published in January 2019. And the American law is Law S1158. You know it, Chris? That's a very unfair question, so let me rather help you. The Elie Wiesel Prevention of Genocide Act.
Oh, yeah. Okay, now I know it.
And the reality about that act is that although America does not have sovereignty over South Africa, of what happened various times in the world, but especially in Rwanda, America said, we're not going to let this happen again. Now, in 2000, and I think it was last year, I'm not sure, I think it was last year, I might be wrong, it must be 2018. It's either 18 or 19. Dr. Gregory Stanton of Genocide Watch in America again made it clear that South Africa's minorities are in a state of genocide. Now the question is, I don't have the answer, you don't have the answer, but we know what your law says. This genocide of people in South Africa can't go on forever, because I don't have to tell you that, you know it much better than I do, but if the American army just sort of put the anchor of one, what do you call them, flight deck ships out here with everything that goes around them.
Aircraft carrier strike.
Aircraft carrier.
A carrier strike
aircraft
group.
Carrier.
A carrier
strike group.
Yep.
The military force in that strike group is more than the whole combined military power in the whole of Africa, including Egypt. So I think arrogance has got to open their eyes. I call it arrogance because we know we're talking about, because they're going to get a surprise. You can't just kill people off and legally, and by the way, it's the same that happened in before 94 with laws that were not even as bad. But let's not go into that. But there were 11 laws that weren't accepted for the world community. Now there's 114. So it can't carry on forever. That's impossible.
It's absolutely mind-boggling to me that the world sits by, as I remember sanctions and I remember all these events. I was a young man and living this, and I remember the world's revulsion at South Africa's apartheid regime and an effort to end it, which, while a lot of people attribute a lot of things to it, the bottom line for me is the reason apartheid ended is because the two threats that the National Party held up as legitimate threats and concerns dissipated. The Svatkavar was no longer something that the white community could by and large support because it was difficult to make that argument. And the Rooikavar just disappeared. The Soviet Union gave up and it all collapsed. And so the National Party, which had been justifying its existence in the latter years and continuing, the raison d'etre had disappeared, the reason for being. That, and I think demographics probably played a role. And I think I would hope that morality, and I think it did based on the people I've talked to over the years, morality also played a role in it. And so it went away. It's astounding to me that people today can listen to nonsense like the North Gauteng High Court upholding a law saying it's not against the Constitution because it comports with a lower law, broad-based black economic empowerment, and denying relief funds to the tourism sector, which is overwhelmingly minority-owned, and denying funds to those businesses so the government can illegitimately prop up majority-owned businesses to drive out minority-owned businesses in the tourism sector. How stupid is that for something that contributes so much to South's GDP? How can that not be racism? How can that be race-based when it's exactly what the court upheld? And now you see things this week. Oh my goodness, the two high court justices must have their heads so far up their rectum that it's coming out their shoulder blades, saying that this is in relation to Cape Town's evictions, saying that if a person illegally occupies land for more than 48 hours, then you can't evict them. What kind of nonsense is that? I'm going to tell you there. Here's the deal, Hein. I'm going to find out the addresses of the posh residences, Santon City, for these members of the ANC and these members of the High Court who come up with this nonsense. And when they go on holiday, I'm going to break in their house. And when they come back, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to call the police because they've invaded my home now because I've been here for 72 hours. So piss off. Fotsek.
The reality is you will very quietly just disappear.
Yeah. No, well,
because that's what a total dictatorship does.
Yeah. Well, it won't be quietly. I've got a few skills.
What do you think? I laughed when I said quietly.
Yeah. No, but here's a serious question on a serious note. And that wasn't really joking, but it was sarcasm. But no sarcasm, yeah. Sarcasm-free comment. Someone asked earlier, and this is a question I want to get to. So what about the term that someone used? I think they were being facetious, as they put in quotes, undesirables. In other words, if you're not part of these cultural and linguistic groups that are forming the new country, do you get to stay or do you have to leave? Because I mean, some Xhosa have been living in the Cape area for dozens of years, if not hundreds of years. I mean, you're not going to just kick them out, are you?
Again, we only follow international law. Mm-hmm. We can only do what international law permits us to do. So, international law says you may not remove people that are staying legally in a specific area. Okay. So that's interesting. In 1994, the South African government made a law. This whole thing when it started with a land reform, and they said if you can prove that your family, somebody, some uncle, some whatever the law says, stayed there after 1913, mm-hmm. then we, the government, will buy your farm back for you. Like I said earlier, they did buy it back with tax money. It's not the government that buys it, it's tax money. People forget about it.
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, I'll go and live there. But it's not their farm, and they don't realize that. So, to answer you, in terms of will we repatriate people? So if we look at international law, what is legal and what is illegal? It becomes illegal in terms of international law to push people into an area only purely for political gain. If you look at, and yes, you're right, there will be very few blacks that have lived there for many, many years in those areas. But if you look at most of the smaller towns in South Africa today, the South Africans that listen will know this. Suddenly, you've got towns where they've never even seen a black.
No.
Now, and I'm not exaggerating, 95% of that town is black. And the first question that we used to all ask is, but how do they live? Simple. They live with what we call SASSA.
Social grants.
SASSA, social grant, is, again, my tax that are being used to vote me out. Those people don't work, but they're there to vote for the ANC. So to answer you on your question, we may not displace people that are legally in an area. Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to make that clear again. Now, let's take Cape Town as an example. A couple of years ago, there was a massive legal case against the Department of Correctional Services, mm-hmm. because the government, forget about that, it's the Correctional Services, the government just fired, for instance, all the coloreds and whites and just employed blacks. And the court case was actually won that the government may not do it. The interesting thing is they still do it in any case. And no, I'm not exaggerating, they're still doing it in any case. So now the question is, those people that are now, those blacks that now have got so-called legal employment in the Cape, is that legal from a political view, international political view, yes or no? No, it's not legal, because they have displaced thousands of indigenous Khoi, San, Griquas, and whites from their jobs. They are then not legally in that area. So the answer is, we will basically send all the blacks that are illegal in the area back to their own land of milk and honey. I mean, this is, of course, the question that we all in South Africa ask. If we are so bad, there's nothing as bad
then why are you
as
coming?
a white.
Then why are you coming here?
We're so bad. The joke is this week, again, I saw a video of now, because that's also surfacing more and more and more, the blacks attacking the coloreds. The coloreds are just absolute crap in their eyes. But what are they doing in our areas then? If it's so bad, guys, your honorable, with a small h, Mr. Ramaphosa, please let my people go. You don't need us. We're a thorn in your side because you hate us. Let us go. What happened to Pharaoh?
What happened to
Be
what?
careful. To Pharaoh in Egypt.
Oh, Pharaoh.
When Moses said, let my people go.
Gotcha. I miss Pharaoh. The pronunciation threw me off. Pharaoh.
Yeah.
That's how we pronounce it. Just kind of threw me off. Yeah. So there's a lot of comments. I want to address a couple of them that aren't necessarily related to this because it's important, I think. But so Rita van Aswegen said that the ULA in Afrikaans is a civic rights organization for minorities in South Africa, not a political party. I believe I translated that correctly. But there's a couple comments here, Hein, and just let me give me a second to divulge from this, or not divulge, but go away a little bit here. There were comments. Koos sent a comment, said, honestly, USA doesn't really care about any other country's problems. They just care about their elections, and they're mostly all bark and no bite. Well, okay, Koos, if you really think the U.S. is all bark and no bite, then I refer you to our history in the 21st century and the 20th century, and the fact that I just spent 23 of 36 years of my adult life in the Army overseas with 3 tours in Germany, a tour in Italy, Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Malawi, Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, and Ethiopia. I spent somewhere in the order of $4 billion I was responsible for during that time frame. Providing HIV relief, tuberculosis, malaria, building schools, clinics, counterterrorism, building respect for civil authority and proper military behavior, respect for land law warfare, doing operations and training with friends, partners, and allies. I think that our bark is there. The U.S. does care about the rest of the world. Someone else said that the world wanted to be the world's policeman. Nope. We assiduously avoided that for a couple of centuries nearly. We stayed out of world affairs. In fact, we had to be drugged into the First World War only by the racist President Woodrow Wilson, who drug us into the First World War. So, yeah, sorry, Hein, there's a couple comments there I just felt was important.
I'm totally with you. I agree with you.
And then Andreas Biamat said, people over the border, USA, China, Russia, are in a quiet background war over resources in Mozambique. No, we're not. We're not. The contracts are going to multinational corporations, of which the U.S. has a corporation that's there, but the U.S. government is not engaged in that conflict. We have no troops in Mozambique, much to my chagrin. When I was assigned to the U.S. Africa Command, they had no interest in Mozambique. I was responsible for Southern Africa. I pointed out that pirates from Somalia would be off the shores and the straits of Mozambique before long. I was told it doesn't matter. It's safe there. Southern Africa is peaceful. I said, well, then you don't know much about history. I didn't say it in that fashion to the general, but I said, then you don't know much about history because 25 years ago, all the fires were in Southern Africa, not the rest of Africa. And I said, they will be there. 4 months later, after they ignored me, pirates were operating off the coast of Mozambique. And I also warned at the time that there would be a conflict in northern Mozambique in Cabo Delgado province in 2012. I told them this within 5 to 7 years. Now, I was a bit early, but in fact, it's going on now. No, the U.S. is not really involved in Mozambique. It's a myth. It's a misnomer. But we probably will become involved at some point. So if you're predicting, that's true. Now, back to you. And so that was kind of a dig at the U.S. I don't know if they meant that intentionally or not. But let me put that for folks who don't know. If I can, Hein, if you mind, just real quick.
Of course,
okay.
Please.
Right. So listen,
because I totally agree with you. I was one of the very, very few private people that, for instance, visited the base in Botswana.
Well, it's not an American base, by the way. That's people keep thinking.
No. Yeah. I know, but we know what's that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, but
I don't want to go.
But people keep that myth going forever. But by the way, folks, so
it's not. I know.
For a lot, because a lot of folks I think came over from ULA to watch this channel, and they don't know anything about me or much about me. So just very quickly, that's what I want to do. So I'm a retired U.S. Army colonel, full colonel, Eagles. That was pretty cool. Started as an enlisted soldier, served from 1983 until October 2019. 3 tours in Europe, all those 8 tours in Africa, plus I've worked in close to 40 countries in Africa, as I mentioned, combat tours in Southwest Asia, several conflicts in the Balkans. I've worked at the National Security Agency, worked at the Defense Intelligence Agency, written for the President of the United States, intelligence products. I have worked at the tactical, the operational, strategic intelligence level, was a foreign area officer for Sub-Saharan Africa for the last 2 decades of my career. And I have taught undergraduate at Iowa State, postgraduate master's program at the U.S. Army War College. So I've been around the block a few times, and I've been inside the wire, so I'm familiar with these issues and these policies, and I've worked national security strategy for the past couple of decades. Anyway, so I just want to share that because I think a lot of people aren't familiar with who I am, and so that's who I am. Now, to you, Hein, Louis ZA had some comments, which I'm just going to bring them up, so if you want to address them, you can. And he said, everyone in the echo chamber needs to be challenged without setting a plan, a timeline, committing to dates. Nothing will happen. And he had another comment here, or maybe that's the second one. No, I think that was the second one. Basically, what Louis ZA is saying is that without timelines, this is just all pie in the sky. I don't know. Obviously, you must not believe that, or you wouldn't be committed to what you're doing.
What's his name? Louis
ZA, yes.
Yeah. Well, firstly, you're more than welcome to underestimate my intelligence, but I won't be involved in trying to get your freedom for so many years if I don't think there's a very great chance of success. But I don't mind, because the freedom that I'm looking for are for the criminal as well as for the law-abiding citizen, for the beautiful people, but also for the ugly ones, for the absolute law-abiding person, and we may not exclude the criminal. And you know what? It's also for you. I don't have a choice. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing this quite simply because you are not doing anything. If you're doing something, then funny enough, I've never heard of you. And as far as I know, with all the years that I've been doing this for you, the people that I've met that have got the attitude, and they're very few, I must add, that I'm wasting my time, very few of them, is very simple. Ask yourself the question, what are you doing for your children and your people's future? I don't have to tell you what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And I'm doing it out of my pocket, not out of pensioners or taxpayers or neighbors or other people's pocket, out of my pocket. I'm doing this for you. A thank you would be nice, but I don't expect it. Don't worry.
So, Hein, I suspect that it's really convenient for you. You are doing all this out of your own pocket, you said, but I mean, those blue light escorts that you were entitled to as a private citizen, that's really helpful to get through traffic, yes? Sorry, I couldn't resist. South Africans know what I'm talking about. Oh, Africans know what I'm talking about. 2 quick things back to this. Had a response back from Koos, and Koos is saying, with respect, I think it's still Magico. Fair enough, Koos. With respect, back to you. That's your view, and that's cool. We disagree. I assume that's what you're responding to. And then the other one was a response back from, let me find this really quickly here. Where's the other gentleman out? I think it was a gentleman. I'm sorry. That might, because I closed that window, I've got to go back and forth here. Koos says that's my nickname. My name is Heinrich. Well, there you go, Hein. There's a Heinrich there. Sorry, I just want to find this really quickly because the gentleman's here in the U.S. and said that started to apologize. No need to apologize. I was just sharing because people don't know. It's YouTube. I'm not on MSNBC or Fox News, and so you don't know who I am, and you don't know my bona fides necessarily. And I'm not showing off my bona fides, but just making the point that didn't just fall off the back of the turnip truck. That wasn't yesterday. That was about 40 years ago. So when I fell off the turnip truck. So anyway, but thank you guys so much for the questions in the chat. So Hein, I've been talking to you for an hour and 40 minutes. I mean, are there some points that I haven't asked you, or something you'd like to bring up to talk about? Anything that's I've overlooked?
Chris, there's so much to talk about, and I meant it, and I said you want to talk another 2 or 4 hours. It doesn't make any difference. There are so many things that we can still talk about, but one of the things that I think that is actually now more important than earlier to mention, and that is that the people that does not agree with what the ULA and I'm doing, and I don't expect everybody to agree, I've got one question for them. Are they then happy with what the ANC is doing? Because it's logic. And that does not mean, and it's not in the same category as, well, the Democrats are not happy with the Republicans, or the Republicans are not happy with the Democrats. At least their country, in this case America, is developing. What is happening in South Africa? A first world country was made a 12-world shithole country in less than the 26 years that we are now in. So, no, I'm not happy with what's happening. And it's not because I'm just not happy. It's because I see that it is not going to improve. It is actually deteriorating literally day by day. Where are we going to end up? The people that don't agree with what I'm doing, I'm talking hard because I want the people to listen. I'm not attacking them. I want them to listen. Do they really realize what happened in Zimbabwe? And I can tell you now, no, they don't. They don't realize what happened in Zimbabwe. And the reality is they think that it can't happen in South Africa. I've got a surprise for them. It's busy starting to happen.
Yeah.
When the Pick and Pays or the Woolworths or the whatever starts running out of food, what are they going to do then? Why didn't we listen to that process? People have asked earlier as well, why don't we have a deadline? We can't have a deadline because we don't have to have a deadline. Mm-hmm. The nice thing about this, and I say nice thing because if everything's just got to be dark and negative and whatever, let's just all blow our heads off and get over with it. But there's a lot of positive in this as well. And that is even the negative ones. Believe me, sir, madam, when there's no food, when the bullet starts flying, your eyes will open. Don't worry. I know it will. The eyes that doesn't open, you will flee. But then you've got to start fleeing now, because then you won't be able to flee. But the reality is, and this is why I say it's happening, people, open your eyes. Now you can't even flee because you can't get out of the country. Not because of a flu virus, because of government clampdown, because the government is doing this. Not America or China or Mars or Uranus. Oh, sorry, Uranus is in the parliament. This is the current government doing it. Open your eyes. When the popo really hits the fan, well, luckily the fan won't be spinning because the electricity will be off by then, but then everybody's eyes will open. We've got to get a solution to the problem. The person tonight that can tell me that he doesn't see a problem, please educate me, because myself and many, many, many other people are living the problem. We are experiencing it. I've got my own business. I can't even get supplies anymore. I've got to wait and wait and wait. At the moment, I'm expanding, for instance, my business. For the past, I think it's 3 weeks now, I couldn't get cement. What a basic commodity is cement. But then again, why should I complain? Because there's nothing wrong in the country. What has cement got to do with a flu virus?
Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
All I'm asking, we're not asking the people for money. We're not asking to give your left arm or your right leg or your mother-in-law. Perhaps we should ask that and we will get more. We're not asking for anything else than 30 or 60 seconds to go and give your mandate. And that mandate says nothing other than, go and read it on the website. Yes, I want sovereign independence, total sovereignty. That's all. If the rest of the world is based on that, if the international law on secession is based on that, what is wrong with what we are doing? Nothing. But I must be honest with you, Chris, the people that I've met over the past many years doing this, that are completely negative about it, this is why I don't really want to talk about the negative side. I can count on two hands. They're very far and few between. It's not the negative people are not negative because of secession. They're either negative because they are ignorant, they don't understand what secession is, because that's the other interesting thing. I get a lot of times to say, oh, I don't support secession. So what do you support? No, I want my own country. Really? So how do you want to get it? I want my own country back. Well, how are you going to get it back? Well, I'll fight for it. And then how are you going to get it back? Well, then I have it. You don't have it. The legal term is called secession. And the legal term is not only a term, it's a process. If you don't support secession, you are telling the rest of the world that you are happy with your situation under the ANC government. That is a reality. Am I correct? As a foreigner, Chris, is that how you understand it?
That's certainly how I understand it.
Foreigner from my point of view.
No. Well, we're all foreigners somewhere, so absolutely. There's a couple things here. Let me run through a list, a couple things to get to very quickly. I didn't see it come up on the screen. I'm not sure why, but there was a super sticker from Jade Grobler. So I'd say Grobler, but Grobler. She gave us, there you go. The best I can. My G's and Afrikaans are just really rough. But she gave a super sticker saying #1 fan. Well, thanks a lot, Jade. I appreciate that. I don't know if you're #1 fan of me or for Hein, but thanks a lot. I appreciate the super sticker. But 3 points I want to get to here very quickly. And the first was to thank Rieta van Aswegen, who subscribed to the channel. That came up. I missed some of the people who subscribed, but thank Rieta, your name jumped out at me, and I saw it again. So thank you for that. 2 points here, Hein. Let's see if we agree on these or disagree. First is Zimbabwe. As I watched the events unfold in Zimbabwe starting 20 years ago, I watched the willing accomplices in the press, the Guardian, the Mail and Guardian, the Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, all of these newspapers be hoodwinked by Robert Mugabe's lies about racism and about, land theft and all this stuff, and settler columns in the 1890s, as if that was 3,700 years ago and this colonial period lasted for centuries. Anyway, I listened to that and I said, this is a lie. This is a lie, because I know the land situation that's been happening since 1980. I said this is being used to defraud people and to attack the MDC from its financial support base, which included commercial farmers, and to undermine it. And when they finish coming for the white commercial farmers, then they'll come for the MDC, which they were doing at the same time. And when they're done with the MDC, then they'll focus on the Ndebele. When they're done with them, then the Shona themselves, who are an amalgamation of groups like the Cesaro and many other subgroups, they'll go for other people. But whatever the case is, as long as you're a ZANU-PF elite, you'll be fine. You'll be the last they come for. And what has happened? What has happened in 20 years? They destroyed the white population of Zimbabwe, chased most of it away, killed a fair number of them, a few hundred in total. Some people say it's an exaggeration. It's not an exaggeration if you look at the true facts of what's been happening for the past 20 years. Oh, my voice just doubled back there. But whatever the case is, you get a situation in which this has been going on for a long time, and they went after everyone else. So it doesn't matter who you are now. If you oppose the government, they oppress you, and they're black. They're oppressing black people. Same thing is going to happen in South Africa. They're going after white South Africans and Afrikaner speakers in particular with all sorts of stuff, renaming of things at places that never had any other people living in, that were named after people who settled there and named it. I mean, Pretoria was not occupied by this mystical Tswana chief Shwana. He was not there. That valley was occupied. It was unoccupied, and it had not historically been occupied. So Zimbabwe, they'll come for you tomorrow in South Africa. That's the message I'm trying to get across here, and people don't believe it. The second is that Davoud Coetzee said that the ANC realized that the jig is up, and I don't disagree with him, but I would argue that the ANC began to realize the jig was up when the EFF got 8% of the vote, and they wet their nappies, and they said, we got to do something, and that is when Now, of course, they went up to 12% recently, but when they got 8%, so they realized that they had to do something. So they decided to adopt the expropriation without compensation nonsense, which they had voted down every single year in Parliament. Every time some idiot ANC parliamentarian had raised it, they voted it down, whether that was for appearances or they genuinely believed it, whatever. They voted it down year after year. And suddenly in 2017, oh, we're in favor of it. That's when the ANC realized the jig was up and they had to do something, but they didn't take it seriously enough. Now they know the jig is up. That's why they're experimenting with undemocratic, unelected, unaccountable, capricious bodies like the National Coronavirus Command Council, which is making laws out of whole cloth and thin air. They're not even laws, and charging people with crimes. By the way, those things have largely been declared unconstitutional by South African courts, which have not been captured, and the government is still pursuing them. Now, they did lift some things recently, but many of the things that are unconstitutional, they've not backed down from. So my point here is, do you agree with me that South Africa, it's a similar situation in which they target one group and they keep expanding out, and the only people protected are the cadres? And then the other one is that, do you think that the ANC actually thinks that they have real concern to be wetting their nappies right now?
Chris, the sad thing is you are looking at it from your perspective, or must I say, our perspective. When you're arrogant, you don't wet your nappies. When you're arrogant, you think you are in total control because you can literally pick up the phone now, get an army helicopter here, fly down to Marshall Bay, shoot Hein Marx, leave out, and say and do whatever you want to. So my answer to you is, no, I don't think they're wetting their panties because they're too arrogant. No, they don't. Because they, and I'm sorry to say, they do not have the insight to understand what is happening with the economy. They don't have the insight to understand what is happening with this small irritation group, United Liberty Alliance, wanting to secede, sending letters through the sheriff of the court to them. They don't have the insight to understand what to do there. They do not have the insight to see that we are going Zimbabwe's way. And if they understand that we're going that way, they also don't mind. You know why? Because, and this I'm saying categorically with no proof, in public, sue me, because then I can prove it. Because they're all sitting with hundreds of millions of rand overseas, and they think they are safe with that money overseas. So what am I saying in total here? They don't have insight. Point.
Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought I lost you there. No, yeah, I think that's great. I don't think we really disagree. Maybe I mischaracterized the point I was trying to make, but yeah, it is fascinating, and I think that the point that you're making is supported by the standpoint from a video I made earlier today about Zandile Gumede, in which the KZN provincial legislator has pushed her aside, but they're still paying her. So, I mean, if they really got the corruption, if they were really wetting their nappies, then they would have dismissed her completely and disciplined her inside the party right now and then let the court case go forward. But what I predicted in my video is that she's dismissed. She still gets a salary for a job she was appointed to illegitimately a week ago. When 3 million South Africans are out of work, she has a job when she shouldn't have a job because she was a corrupt mayor of Durban. And then she would be in prison were it not for bail right now. And she's appointed to the legislature. They dismiss her. They still pay her. And I guarantee that she'll never come to trial. And if she does, she'll never get a genuine sentence. And that's so that augurs and that kind of goes along with your point, is that they really don't get it because they are arrogant. They are definitely arrogant. I can't dispute that.
You see, I don't want to go too much into that because unfortunately for the non-South Africans watching your show, they've got their basis on perspective on life. So they don't understand what is going on in South Africa as much as the people didn't understand what happened here before 1994.
Yeah.
But the reality is the people, and I've said it a couple of times, I just want to say it finally, they do not have the insight we've got a saying in Afrikaans. They don't have the insight to see further than their noses. And it's so true in South Africa, because if they knew, if they saw where we're going, for instance, they wouldn't have thrown money away at SAA. They wouldn't have wasted hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions, on Eskom. But to them, it's you see, this is stuff people don't understand. To them, it's 100% no-go. You may not appoint, this is part of the 114 laws, a white person to solve the problems. So they know they can't solve the problems. So what do they do in the army and in the medical corps? They import Cubans, so-called Cuban doctors, which again, I can't say for a fact, but I'm in the medical field, and all I can tell you is it's well known that they are not even close, the so-called doctors, to South African doctor standard.
No, but they did cost 543 million rand at a time when South Africa is bankrupt.
Yeah. You see, we can go on. In terms of the ULA, you asked me a question. What do I want to address? I don't want to talk about we're talking about the problem. I don't want to talk about the problem.
Well, here, let's do this. We're coming up on 2 hours, Hein. So why don't you talk some solutions, and then we'll probably wrap up after that. So talk some solutions.
In terms of what we're doing, we are saying, people, we are not a political party. We don't even want to become a political party. Go to the website, give your mandate that you want this problem to be solved, and the only way, and believe me, you're more than welcome to underestimate my intelligence, but in the process, you guys are also then underestimating a lot of very senior advocates and attorneys' intelligence. There is no other solution. I've been involved in this for how many years now? And believe me, I know it's incredibly difficult to do this whole secession process. I know, I've lived it. I've financed it. I know what it is. But I also know there is no other solution. If there was any other easier solution, believe me, we would have tried it. There's no other solution. So what I'm saying, what can we do to get this thing going? Simple. Go to the website. Sign up. And sign up only means you say yes. You give your details. That, in terms of international legal requirements, is a vote for a mandate. It's not a vote for a political party. It's not a vote for anything else than you want sovereignty. That's all. We are standing for, to make that very clear, a new confederate system. Not a federal system, because a federal system is, again, a very, in my eyes, this is no way saying that it's wrong in terms of America. I'm not saying that. But in the South African context, it is totally wrong. Why is it wrong? Because it was proven in South Africa that a central government does not work. Why? Because we've got so many different groupings in South Africa. So what are we talking about? We're talking about, as the ULA, we're talking about your European grouping. We're talking about your Khoi, San, Griqua, Nama. So if we want a confederate system, then we've got to put the Khoi in Griqua land, or at least they've got to be in charge in Griqua land, because they won't necessarily all stay there. Mm-hmm. They will govern themselves. They will decide what language they want to talk, what must be taught in their schools, their laws there. The same with the Namas. The Namas will go to Namaqualand. This is the easy thing, actually. Mm-hmm. These areas are already there. So it's easy to put the people there. Trans-Oranje, which is another area which consists out of two confederate states, which is call it Transvaal if you want to, and the Free State. It's there because they've been there. The only area of the, I think it's 8 Confederate states that is not as straightforward is the Cape Peninsula. Because the Cape Peninsula, you can't say today that the Cape Peninsula belongs to the whites, but you also can't say it belongs to the Khoisan or the Coloureds. So the Cape Peninsula, luckily because it's also financially the most developed and wealthy area, we don't have a choice. You've got to keep it as it is. But then you look back and you see, okay, apart from 1961 to 1994, where there were apartheid laws against the Coloureds, before that, the Coloureds were they even had voting rights. So what I'm saying is, the whites and the Coloureds or the Khoisan lived together for hundreds of years there. The rest will be sovereign states under a confederate central government, which is very, very small, because a confederate government is very small. Mm-hmm. It basically consists out of your military, because you've got international borders outside, and in our case, very much so that we've got to defend. Perhaps we're back in the 1700s, where our borders will be raided all the time. This time we're just better equipped. Mm-hmm. And you've got to have one currency, and you've got to have one single Department of Foreign Affairs, because you've got to have the same laws in your Department of Foreign Affairs. So in this new Confederate system, we will literally, since 1652, for the first time then have a system where each group will totally govern themselves. I can't think of a better situation than that. If whoever thought in 1994, or since 1991 for that matter, that the Rainbow Nation thing will work, well, the reality is now it's proven that it can't work. In fact, it's even worse. When, according to the international community, it didn't work when the National Party government governed the blacks, and in the process built how many universities, how many schools, how many, no. I can go on like that forever. And then you look at since 1994 to 2020, what have the black government done for the whites? It's actually totally vice versa. They just broke down, raped, killed, and belittled us incredibly. In the beginning, they didn't do it to the colored community. Now they do it to the colored community as well. But I suppose that's the way that history must go for people's eyes to open. So what I'm saying is, in a new Confederate system, that is the only way that you can govern yourselves. And for that to happen, bring your vote out, but don't stop there. Get your wife, your girlfriend, your scallopy as well. You know what a scallopy is, Chris?
Say again?
I said, you know what a scallopy is?
No, I don't. You got me. That's
the guy that's married, that's got another girl on the sideline. We call it a scallopy in Afrikaans.
Yeah, you're talking about a small house.
A small, okay, right. No, that one, but yeah. But get your wife, your scallopy, your children above 18, your friends, your neighbors, people that stand in front of you with this ridiculous queues that we've got to stand in now, the ones that stand behind you, get people to sign to get their independence, because people, nobody can get it for you. You've got to get it yourself. And the interesting thing is, all you've got to do is to say, yes, I want it. That's all. But that's too much for a lot of people. And again, I want to say this again. If you don't want sovereignty, then you are happy with the ANC and the way they are running the country into the ground at the moment. That's something I don't understand. So that is my genuine plea on my knees. Go and sign that you can get sovereignty and get other people to do it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's what you're talking about is in for the other parts of the region. People say small house, and in Setswana or Tswana, it's Nyatsi. Just for clarification's sake, Nyatsi. Yeah, so what you're talking about is a Swiss-style canton system, a confederation. While it works for Switzerland, the circumstances are different. But I would urge some caution, and obviously you've taken a look at this. But we tried a confederation, and it failed miserably because the central government was too weak. Now, I think our system worked very well with a weak central government that had strength in foreign policy and the things you talk about up until the early part of the 20th century. Once we went into the First World War, it's been a very different story. It's been a situation in which the federal government has amassed more and more and more and more power, and it's become too powerful, and it's become a threat to citizens in this country. I'm not advocating revolution. I'm just saying that it's far beyond the intent. And we have executives, chief executives, who issue executive orders which have no weight of law for anyone in the country except for those who work for the executive branch. In other words, as a military officer, when the president signs the executive order, it applies to me. But it doesn't apply to you as a private citizen because he has no authority. But we've seen successive chief executives use the executive order to basically practice law. Famously, Obama did it with DACA to give illegal criminal alien invaders children residency here and let them stay. So yeah, I get your point, but it's something to be careful about and think very hard about, which I'm sure you must have put a lot of reflection into. But someone made the point in the comments, well, so what you're trying to do is recreate apartheid. Only the Nama can be here. Only the Greek. No, I don't think that's what you're talking about. What you're talking about is that there would be a Greek state, there would be a Nama state. Anyone could live there who has citizenship in the Confederation. You wouldn't be dividing people, but it would be a state that's named after those folks, and that's the traditional heritage of the people there. Did I get that correct?
Absolutely, because for instance, let's say the Griquas decide, but they want a Griqua university. Mm-hmm. No, let's make it different. Let's make it interesting.
Okay.
In Bushmanland, for instance, they decide they want to have a Bushman college, mm-hmm. where they want to teach their people again to hunt in the Kalahari and have a Bushman lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Now they can't do it. In fact, it's illegal now. They can't do it. But then they've got the legal right in their country to do it. Now you've got a Khoisan, a Bushman living in Cape Town that says, listen, Dad, now that I think of it, I actually want to become an old traditional Bushman again. I really want to do that. And he gets on the plane. Listen to this. Bushman, he gets on the plane. He doesn't walk there. And he goes there. But the point is he goes and he gets taught his traditional values. His traditional values. Not somebody else's values. It's open. Now he can do it. The same with the Griquas or the Namas or whatever, The point is, they govern themselves. And that's what it's all about. What is one of the biggest problems in South Africa at the moment? Remember, I said it earlier, Afrikaans is an 80% denominator of all the groups in the area. Mm-hmm. Now, what is the government doing? Nothing is in Afrikaans anymore. They refuse Afrikaans.
Stellenbosch University's median language instruction. Stellenbosch University, world-renowned Afrikaans university, no longer in Afrikaans.
No longer Afrikaans. So the point is, you can tread on people up to a point. You can't do it forever. And I don't want to go into all the things that were said about the Boer or the Afrikaner nation, but the interesting thing is, a couple of negative things has also been said during the apartheid years, but there were many, 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 many more positive things said about us because we can prove all the things and the inventions that we've made in this world for the good of the world. So you don't tread on people that will slip out and bite you in the ass.
Folks, if you don't mind, we've got still over 200 people watching the stream, a little over 2 hours into it. So thank you so much for that. Bye bye, donkey, ke alabo. Appreciate folks tuning in for the stream. It's been a fascinating discussion with Hein Marx. I've enjoyed it so far. But we're at 187 likes. Can there's 200 people. Got to be a few of you there that haven't pushed the like button. Or if you dislike it, push the dislike button, but push something because it draws viewership. I have to admit, Hein, when you mentioned Bosmanland, my head started going elsewhere. I was like, oh, Bokkie Fatja Slope, oh, Bokkie Fatja Slope, Bosmanland. Fat my hand. That's what I started thinking of. That's where my head went to. I had Afrikaans music in my head when you say Bosmanland. Sorry
Chris,
about
just
that.
a second. I see my plug is not in, or not switched on. Let me just switch it on.
Okay. Yeah, so folks, if you don't know, you're listening to Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel. My special feature guest today is Hein Marx, who's the leader of this United Liberty Alliance in South Africa, in the Cape Province, looking for independence from the Republic of South Africa. So yeah, he's back now, so thanks for coming back. But yeah, so let's see. So any last comments, and then we'll wrap up here. And I want to thank you, but before I thank you, let me give you the last chance to that was a good wrap up. I didn't mean to like let you put all your thunder out there, but you've got a lot of things, points you'd like to make. So let me ask you any last thing you'd like to leave the audience with?
Well, no, I just want to say thank you for everybody that listened. We don't have the ear of the national media in South Africa because they're paid by the ANC government. So to everybody that listened, thank you very much. Chris, to you, you're a bigger friend of South Africa than I think most people realize, but especially with your insight, specifically from a military point of view, where you see the bad side of the world as well. Thank you for that. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to let people know what we are doing is nothing else than fighting for their rights. We're doing this to have a solution, not to pick another fight, not to cause more problems, but we are doing this to solve this problem because this problem is not going to go away. It's only going to get worse. So thank you, really. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chris.
No, it's my absolute pleasure. And so Yanni Maya said, "Donkey, keep it up, Hein." And he said, "Chris is an American boy, honorary citizen." Hein? It was a question mark.
Well, it means you've got to get a new passport when we secede.
Well, I tell you,
with pleasure.
I think that the Pete Retief or the Paul Kruger look is what convinces people. But this is a relatively recent development for me. I never had a beard because I just left active service. But anyway, so what I'm going to do, Hein, if you don't mind, is I'm going to put you in the waiting room. If you can hang around a few minutes, because I just want to discuss a few things after I go off the stream.
Perfect.
So if you could just hang on, and I'm going to put you in the waiting room. I want to thank my guest, Hein, and put him in the waiting room here. Come on, where's it at there? There we go. Put you in the waiting room. Thanks a lot, Hein. Okay. All right, folks, I got to fix that screen. Give me just a moment here, and I'll get it back in just a second. There we go. All right, folks. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thanks for the super sticker that I got earlier, and also for the new membership, as well as those who became subscribers. Listen, if you guys came over, and there were a lot of new faces here today, or a lot of new usernames, should I say, new handles. If you came over from the ULA and you've not watched Chris Wyatt Africa, I think that you'll find this to be an interesting channel. I promote Afrikaans culture. I cover everything in Africa, whether it's the Sudan, it's Nigeria, it's Ghana, it's Malawi, the warm heart of Africa, Southern Africa, my first interest in Africa, of course, and South Africa. So you'll find, I think, interesting content on the channel, and I don't hold it back. I expose the warts. I talk about Botswana in a very positive light, but I also talk about the things that are screwed up in Botswana. So anyway, folks, I appreciate you coming over. Hopefully you found the channel. And Santanet Nell, who just subscribed, that's an interesting name, Santanet. Well, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. I hope that you find the content interesting, and feel free to check out my prepared videos. I cover all kinds of subjects, from the energy sector to national security to the cattle industry, exporting beef from Namibia, and I just did recently one on the macadamia nut industry in South Africa. By the way, South Africans, if you don't know, you're number one, not just in confirmed COVID-19 cases in Africa, not just in HIV positive citizens, number one in the world. You're number one not just in corruption and violent murders, but you're also number one in macadamia nut production and export. So you see, I cover the gamut of things. Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. My many, many thanks to my guest, Baya Donkey, to Hein Marx. I appreciate it. It was pleasant having a little conversation in German at the beginning there with him. both of us having lived in Germany. So thanks a lot, folks. I appreciate it. I'll be back on in about an hour and a half for the Stray Voltage Night Owls edition. We'll go over some of the stuff we talked about with Hein, and I'll answer some questions for folks who want to be there. For the trolls, they don't appear to be here momentarily, but if they do show up later on, you will be spanked and you will be sent home with your wet nappies. We're not tolerating that nonsense. It's a block and mock strategy for trolls. And for those who caught my live stream of the Republican National Convention last night, you'll notice that I did a lot of that last night. Anyway, folks, thanks a lot. I'm going to close out here in just a moment. And I appreciate your patronage. And I hope that we see a lot of you on the channel more frequently, those of you who just arrived. For my long-standing subscribers and viewers, thank you so much for joining me for this stream. I appreciate it. God bless, and have a pleasant day and evening wherever you may find yourself. And as Big Daddy Liberty says, never trust a commie. As I say, never trust a cadre. And for these days, don't trust the Democrats. All right, God bless.